Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe,
in hard H's.
Hard aspirin H's, that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you are an OG listener, welcome back, Sparky. If you're joining us for the first time, know that all are welcome here.
Whether you have put your creativity on pause during this time, or if you've clung to it like a lifeline, either way, welcome.
But you may be asking yourself, well, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are such good questions, and we have got answers.
A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations.
Here's the deal. We are makers. We make all kinds of things.
And if you're like us and you're making stuff all the time or want to be making stuff all the time, you know that the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry, especially now.
But don't despair, because we're here for you, and we are on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity. Things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or a daily creative habit that gets us one step closer to completing our projects and mastering our talents.
Ah, I love it. Or a series of questions designed to make you think a little more deeply about the choices you make every day.
Oh, every episode, we're going to reach into the Spark File and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
And if you're not careful, you just might let us get into your head for the next couple of hours. So without further ado, let's open up the Spark File.
Spark File. Hi, Suze. It's our favorite day of the week.
It's a podcast day. You know, I love it. And I'll speak for myself. Okay, I've had a little bit of caffeine. I know this looks like a beer, but it's actually caffeine.
A big deal.
And we've also spent the morning and part of the afternoon with the Spark File Select Group Creativity Coaching.
I love program. That group of human beings.
What I said today, I was like, I don't mean this to be self-aggrandizing, because I know Laura and I made the program, but I feel so lucky to be with this group of people. My God, they're spectacular.
Suze, I don't want to reveal this secret to them, because it seems as though they have gathered in this place for us to help them. And yet, oh my God, we are reaping the benefits of it is us who have been gifted with the pleasure of their company, watching them really
my
expand and grow and share their work. It's just like it just lights us up, I think.
The risks these people are taking and they're sharing the vulnerability and the God, all the different kinds of creative projects that are coming out of it. It blows my mind. And again, I say, I feel like I am a delivery room nurse, and every time this little creative baby pops out, I burst into tears.
Yeah.
It's
pretty astonishing. It's astonishing to watch, a piece of paper that was blank, that had nothing, is now suddenly filled with ideas and concepts and things that are being literally brought to life.
Love it. Love it. Love
pretty
it.
great.
So we're both coming off of that. So I'm a little jazzed. I'm a little jazzed up. Cams, I had this spark idea that I just want to cast out. It's a little baby spark. I want to cast it out into the sparkosphere. And if anybody wants to make it or write it or script it or pitch it, go on and do it. Okay. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
This just came to me the other day. Okay, so you know that, as I've discussed on the podcast before, and I'm just very thoughtful about when and around whom I say this, but I have been privileged to have a very good time during this pandemic. Not to say that I've been partying or something, just meaning that I've had the privilege of being able to stay safe, to stay healthy. Unlike many people, I've experienced some loss, but I mean, some people have experienced unthinkable, tremendous loss.
And from loss of, work that they love to human beings. Yeah.
Oh my God. So much
Homes.
Different. Oh my God. Yes. So we have used this time to continue to do work that we love with people that we adore, and to have really deep, meaningful connections with each other and our clients. And I mean, really, so when people harsh on Zoom, I'm like, wow, this little introvert loves it because I can have these deep connected moments with people. And then I have my time to myself, which I also really adore.
Yeah.
And it's just been lovely.
And Suze, we can't discount the fact that, creativity helping all of us complete that stress cycle, as you taught all of us in that spark. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that, we turned our focus almost entirely on being creative, helping others be creative, and, the connections that we make in that process. So it doesn't surprise me that ultimately, positive feelings and positive results have come from that.
So that's where I'm at. And I was just thinking about that the other day as we sort of get vaccinated and start to move back out into the world. And I know we'll continue to have conversations about what that means and navigating that transition, because I do think it's going to be something to navigate, even if you've really been looking forward to a return to a new reality where there's more hugging involved and more gathering of people. It's still going to be a transition for sure. Yeah. And I think about it when I was in graduate school. I've told you this story before, but I broke both my arms in one fall. And I spent the summer with my arms in casts. Now, I have kind of little bony baby bird arms to begin with. But at the end of that summer, when they took those casts off, number one, Stinktown. But number two, my little arms had atrophied so much that they were just these, and the skin was so, when they take the cast off, they send you straight over to a sink, and they're like, go ahead and take time and just it's going to be very tender, but you're going to want to wash off all of that crud. Just it's really gross. Sorry, Cams, I see your face right now and you're like, that's not cute. Yeah. And guess what? It really smelled like it looked. So
I was still on Stinktown. Yeah.
But I will tell you, when that water hits your little skin for the first time in months, and your little atrophied arm, I was like, is that what it's going to be like a little bit to go out for the first time or be in a
little
crowd for the
bit.
first time, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so I was
Yeah.
thinking about all of this, and I was thinking about how I've been tucked away on the side of a mountain, you know, having this really rich, like deeply, deeply rich connections with people. And of course, I'm lucky to have love and companionship with Nathan.
Yeah.
I do not take that for granted. And POTUS and Kitty, I do not take them for granted. And so I get touch and stuff like that.
Sure.
And then I thought about, so here's the spark. This is
Okay.
a long way to grandma's spark.
Prelude to a spark.
Prelude to a spark. So what if there's like an episode, this could be a film, this could be an episode of Black Mirror, I don't know. But you're just basically seeing somebody like me, their pandemic reality, where I'm sort of just like a happy introvert. I'm working on Zoom. I'm talking to clients. I'm talking to my business partner. I am, getting my entertainment through my Netflix and my streaming services. I am voxering. We voxer with clients all day. Like I'm having all of this, my proxy, the character is having all of this like super meaningful engagement. And then the twist is that like you open a door and you realize this person is the last person on earth and it was all virtual reality.
That is totally Black Mirror.
It was all AI generated.
Oh my
God. It was all like your conversations with your therapist and your conversations with your clients and your business partner and your mom and
made it
your
all up.
Grandkids. It's all being generated like by a supercomputer and you're really the last person on earth.
But that human is real. That person was real.
That human is very Twilight Zone.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And then you break your glasses and you have all his books. That's Twilight Zone. That's just a ripoff. But that's my...
I missed that last part about the books.
Remember that episode of Twilight Zone where he was the last man on earth and he was surrounded by books and he was just like, books, books, books. I'll fill my time with books. And then his glasses break.
No, I've not seen that.
Spoiler alert.
Oh my God.
A 50-year-old episode of a television show.
Oh my God. If you haven't watched it yet, run. Don't walk.
Is it Burgess Meredith, I think, maybe?
I don't know. I remember one about like it getting hotter and hotter and hotter on Earth. And like because the Earth had sort of like gotten out of its orbit. And so it was getting like further and further from the sun. So with each with each cycle, it was getting further away. No, the other way around. It was getting closer and closer and closer to the sun. And it was going to burn up. And then the person wakes up from the dream and they're like under 7 layers of blankets because the reverse was actually true. They were getting further and further and further, drifting away from the sun. Oh, Twilight Zone.
This has been another episode of the Spark Pod Podcast.
Two oldies but goodies. Yeah, there we go.
Anyway, that's right. Our 2 sparks are 2 episodes of the Twilight Zone. All right, enough. Shall we? Is there anything? Any news
could there be anything
share?
Fresher? Would we talk about anything fresher than
70-year-old episodes of television shows? Oh my God.
Yes, I'm ready for some sparks. Do you want to go first?
I will crack into a fresh spark for you,
Cams.
Cams,
Nice.
I will tell you, when I dove into this spark, I thought I knew where it was headed.
Oh, these.
And then I took a left turn at Albuquerque. I took a left turn at Sparkbuquerque, but I went with it, and I'm glad that I did because it took me so many unexpected places.
Nice.
And my entire spark this week is titled with one tiny word, and that word is why.
What?
I wanted to use the pronunciation I was using at the top. Why.
Why is the name of your spark? Why?
The name of my spark is why, Cams.
Wow.
WHY. Why. And that's one of those words when you look at it and say it a lot, it totally starts to lose its meaning. Why. It's so weird. That is a weird fucking word. WHY.
Why?
Why. 3 little letters. And
Why?
as I was writing the spark and researching the spark, I was like, it is as small as a key. And if it's used correctly, as powerful. Why? Oh, boom. You didn't expect that level of
dropping
profundity.
Quotes.
So I remember the first time I was really exposed to the power of the word why. I was a graduate student, and one of our teachers did this exercise with us, and I'm going to do it with you now, Cams. He asked us why we wanted to study acting. And I am going to do this with you, Cams. And I just want to point out to listeners, what we're about to do is not scripted. I'm totally putting Laura Camion right on the spot. But she's brilliant. And I actually think this is going to be quite awesome. You can take it. I trust you. Cams, I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
Why do you want to make the Spark File? The business, the courses, the podcast. Why do you want to make the Spark File? Why do you want to create the Spark File?
I want to create the Spark File because I want to help myself and other people feel the exhilaration and power of creativity and what it feels like for them to get their ideas out of their minds and into the world.
Great. And why do you want to do that?
I believe that we will be happier people by doing that, whether people do it professionally or they do it as hobbies and habits that just enrich their lives. I think that it makes us happier, more fulfilled, to be self-expressed.
And why does that matter?
Well, on the really big scale, I'm embarrassed to say this.
Say it. Go big. Go big or go home. Get out of here, kid. Go big.
Because I believe that when people are not self-expressed, I believe that things fester inside of them, anger and resentment and sadness and shame. And I think that by creating and expressing ourselves, we free ourselves from many negative emotions.
And why does that matter?
Oh, I see where this is going to. I think it matters because, again, on a very large scale, I think it affects the way we treat each other as human beings. I think hurt people hurt people. I think that angry people do angry and violent things. I think that we can help to avoid some of the pain and anguish that is going on in the world by starting local, starting with our own individual selves and being more self-expressed as individuals, again, can keep those feelings from festering and keep it from leading to pain and anguish on a large scale.
And why does that matter?
It matters because I want to live in a better world. I want to live in a world where people are kinder to themselves and to each other, where people see and appreciate differences and can contemplate what it is like to walk in other people's shoes and have empathy for each other.
So Cams,
yeah, babe.
Why do you want to create the Spark File?
Because I want to make the world a better place, Suze. I want to make the world a better place.
There you go. That's it, baby.
That's it there. That's
the
my
exercise.
Why.
Yeah.
Oh.
You want to make the Spark File because you want to make the world a better place.
I want to make the world a better place. Starting local. Act. What is it? What's that phrase?
Think global, act local.
Exactly.
Think global, act local. That's right.
Essentially,
that's exactly right.
In terms of creativity.
That's right. So that's one of the powers Cam's just beautifully demonstrated. And thank you for going on that little journey with me,
You betcha.
Cams.
Happy to.
And again, she did it so beautifully that you might think that that was prepared, but I totally sprang that on
I promise you it was not. It was not. And Susan's going to hear about it. Kidding.
The minute I push pause on this recording.
Yeah.
Oh boy. But you just demonstrated is one of the powers of why, and why can be a key that can turn and swing open doors of understanding and problem solving and creativity. So I had a very similar experience when I volunteered to do this in my graduate school acting class. And why do you want to be an actor? And I was like, because I started very because I think I'm really good at it, and because I want to be blah, blah, but why? But why does that matter? Why?
Why do
and I
you
got
wanna
all
be
the way
Meryl
to,
Streep?
and I got all the way to because I want to make the world a better place. If you keep peeling back the layers, and I'm sure there's other good answers to that, but that's where Cams and I seem to have arrived. Related to this, another spark for this why spark was an article from the New York Times by a dude I've actually talked about before in our workshops and maybe even on this podcast. And that's a name you're going to recognize this name, Charles Duhigg. So Charles wrote an article for the Times called How Asking 5 Questions Allowed Me to Eat Dinner with My Kids. And I was like, well, that is the most awesome clickbaity title of an article. How Asking 5 Questions Allowed Me to Eat Dinner with My Kids. Cam's, spoiler alert, can you guess what 5 questions Chuck asked that allowed him to eat dinner with his kids?
Oh, no. No, I can't guess. Do you really want me to?
Why, and why?
Interesting.
Those are the 5 questions.
Like, why can't we get to the dinner table together on time?
Yep. What you just did. You just did it. You just demonstrated it. So here's the story.
Okay.
Some years back, Charles Duhigg was working on this book about productivity. And I just want to say productivity is a word that I find a little bit triggering. As we've discussed before on this very podcast, I think that we as a culture have been brainwashed to believe that productivity is this hallowed, ongoing goal, like the ultimate goal to strive for.
That's right.
We've been so rewarded for being productive, and I think it serves the capitalist system we live in. So productivity has been sort of canonized. But in a second, we're going to talk about another definition that I personally find more useful.
Great.
But where was I? So Charles Duhigg was working on this book about the secrets of productivity, and he claims that his hidden motivation was this: to figure out how to eat dinner with his wife and his 2 sons, who were 7 and 4 at the time the article was written. He and his wife both had these demanding jobs, and their family had found it nearly impossible to consistently sit down and have dinner together. Every morning, they would announce their intentions to leave work early enough so that they could all eat together. But then one thing would lead to another, and life would happen, and they would get held up at work. And then the babysitter would call and say that the kids were starving, and then snacks were being handed out, and on until they were not sitting down to eat dinner together and lather and rinse and repeat. So Charles Duhigg says he eventually found a solution to their dinner time dilemma in an unlikely place, a Toyota factory that opened in Fremont, California in the 1980s. So some old-ass Toyota factory in Fremont, California. According to Duhigg, the factory was guided by a management philosophy known as the Toyota Production System, which at its core holds that even the most complex problems have simple causes if you know how to look for them. That philosophy is known as the 5 whys. And here's how it works. Ready? You simply keep asking why. So for the Duhiggs, this is how it played out. They began by identifying the problem. We never managed to have dinner together. And then they explored at the most surface level why. And on the most surface level, it's because Charles and his wife always got home later than they expected. And then came the next why. Why were we getting home so late? The answer was that although they intended to leave the office by 5, they often found it impossible to walk away from their desks because there were so many tasks that they had ignored during the day, which prompted the next why. Why had they ignored all these tasks? So it turns out, inevitably, they arrived at work each morning just in time for their first meetings to begin. So rather than deal with like unread emails, etc., they put them aside until later in the day. And then when they finally got to them, in addition to those ones they hadn't dealt with in the morning, there were new emails and tasks that demanded their attention. Then comes the next why. Why were they arriving at work right before their first meetings rather than a little bit earlier? Because although they always intended to leave the house at 8 a.m. to get the kids to school, they usually ran late and they didn't get out the door until around 8:20 or so. And finally, the fifth why. Why were they leaving the house later than they planned? Because it took so long to get the kids dressed in the morning that they always left later than they had expected. So to recap, they began by identifying the problem. Despite their declared intentions, they weren't managing to have dinner together as a family. And then by tracking through the 5 whys, they found their root cause. Their kids were taking too long to get dressed in the morning. Blame it on the kids, Charles Duhigg. They're too little to read the New York Times and defend themselves. So Duhigg said that before conducting this exercise, he would have, I believe this too, he said he would have never suspected that there was a connection between their morning routines and their evening meal. But once they took the time to ask why after why after why after why after why, it was clear what needed to change. If they could convince their kids to get dressed earlier, they could make it out the door faster, and in turn, they would have time to get to their desk to deal with admin work before the day started getting crazy, and then they would be able to leave work a little earlier, make it home in time, and have dinner together. So they instituted a new family rule. Each night before going to bed, the kids laid out their clothes for the next day, and then they got dressed as soon as they woke up. So in this scenario, the 5 whys is this process of continually asking questions until you get to the root cause and getting closer and closer and closer to the core of the problem until you understand what's really going on. Camion, I read this and I was like, this smells right to me. I was like, this smells useful to me. Do you have any thoughts swirling around in your head over there as I say all this to you?
Well, one thing popped up when, a few weeks ago we talked about the upper limit problem, and we talked about like one of the ways we keep ourselves from experiencing, the expansion into greater and greater things is by blaming and focusing on like the blame of something. And so as you were talking about these whys, I thought like, wow, dedicating yourself to the practice of asking why and why and why and why could also help to alleviate some of the like just getting fixated on a thing and blaming it for why you're not having dinner. You know what I mean? Why you're not having dinner with your family, or why you're not creating, why you're not getting something done. Keep asking the whys until you get to something that is within your control, that is something that you can do. So I was just over here thinking about how it could be beneficial in so many ways. But one of which is to not, it kind of doesn't allow us to get stuck in the blame if we keep asking a why.
Amazing. As you were saying that, I was like, I wonder if this could sort of take the teeth out of certain kinds of conflict. When, you know what I mean? If you,
that's right.
Like you're saying, like if you're tracking back to what is something that I am at cause for, or I am responsible for, instead of just being like, that person is making me miserable with
that's
their
right.
shenanigans.
Or like my spouse can't get home in time for dinner and we can't do this thing. When in actuality, you go all the way back and you realize like, the morning is the issue. And if we both do this thing the night before, we can play a part in making a difference to achieve the goal, the mutual goal that we want.
Yeah.
It's
just
really
not to jump to, what do we make of it? But next time we're having a real conundrum in our business, I think it'd be fun to run the 5 whys.
Yes. Why?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When we're just like, this is a pickle. Like,
that's right.
How can we? It might be interesting.
That's right.
Yeah. So
That's
to
great.
recap, Duhigg says that the 5 whys is a process of continually asking these questions until you get to the root cause and understand what's really going on. And he says that this method has helped managers eliminate waste, aided executives in figuring out what projects to pursue and which to discard, and helped children understand how to analyze problems and find solutions, and assisted teachers in creating environments where even underperforming students can succeed. And I'll add to this, I think it would be useful, could be useful to creatives like you and me and all you little Sparkies out there listening. If there's something in your creative process that's not working for you, the 5 whys might help you get to the bottom of the root cause. Like,
Yes.
if you have every intention of being a stand-up comic and for some reason you're not making it up, night after night after night, like digging, and find out what's really going on. And it could be something that you would not have connected in your mind. You know what I mean? Yeah. As I've said before on other episodes of this podcast, and I said earlier, I have over time developed a little bit of an allergic reaction to the word productivity. But this next bit that Charles Duhigg wrote actually spoke to me. He said, at the center of the 5 whys, the reason it's so effective is a basic insight. Productivity means different things to different people, but at its core, it's about thinking a little more deeply about the choices we make every day. Productivity isn't about running faster or pushing yourself harder, but rather about working smarter and paying a bit more attention to what is really going on. That to me seems more like mindfulness, but I'm like, if you say so, that helps me make peace with the word productivity.
That's right. It also reminds me of just last week when we talked about, or 2 weeks ago when we talked about the attention economy, that we are in choice about where we put our energy and our time. And so if we're like, I'm not getting any of my writing done, but I look at my phone and it is telling me that I just spent 5 hours a day on average on my phone. Yeah. This is information that does affect your productivity, that it's fine. It's just the awareness of like, you've made that choice about what is more important. Yeah.
Can I just tell you how every time I look at after we had that conversation on the podcast, every time I look at my phone now, I have this awareness. I'm not mean to myself about it, but I'm just like, I'm just sort of like, how much of this are you going to give to them? How much of this are you going to give to them? How much of your attention are you going to give to this? And it minimizes my time on the phone because I'm like, blip, bloop, that's enough. Blip, blip. You've gotten enough of me.
That's right.
Go track somebody else. Bots.
I mean, yeah. And for some people, they may get more out of it than we do. And they might be like, no, this is the best use of my time. This is how I want to spend it. Okay. But for most of us, it is drawing us in. And without that awareness, it is our brain is, sending our body chemicals and making us feel certain ways that we actually can walk away from.
Yeah, that was a gift. You gave me a gift. Thank you for that. I love that, Spark.
Thanks.
But now back to the why. Back to this Spark.
Don't
get jealous, gift. Spark. You're also very pretty, Spark. So by the end of the article, Charles Duhigg claimed that he and his wife made a game with their kids where they would choose their outfits and lay out their clothing before they fell asleep at night, and that they were dressed every morning by 7:30. And that small shift had a profound impact. Calmer mornings, prompt departures, home from work earlier, and dinner as a family at least 3 times per week. And I'm like, that's pretty great. I think I would call that a win, Charles Duhigg.
I am laughing about I wonder how many things are affected by our clothing. I remember when I was trying to like walk or run in the morning, and now I'm more free about like the time of day. It doesn't matter to me. And so
Yeah.
I've like given myself that gift. But at the time, it was very much like it's in the morning or it's nothing at all. And I would get up in the morning, and I'll be damned if I did not have my sports bra, that specific thing, sports bra, ready to go. If I had to
Yeah.
scramble to look for it, where's my sports bra? Oh, is it in the
Where's the
washer?
clean
Is it in
sports
there?
bra?
Nope,
Yeah.
not going to happen. And so
Yeah.
I realized, I didn't realize I was using the 5 whys, but by, tracing it back to that, it was like, holy crap, this one thing is, this entire plan is make or break on this one element.
I need one clean fucking sports bra
That's all I need.
at an arm's reach. Absolutely. He concluded the article by saying productivity isn't every family's goal, but understanding how to analyze problems by drilling down to their roots can go a long way toward making life easier. So yes, sports bra. And a little side spark on top of that, Cam, this actually leads me to something I've been doing in my life. I don't think I've talked about it on the podcast. I know we've talked about it privately, but my version of laying out my clothes the night before is this. It's from a book called Organize Tomorrow Today by Dr. Jason Selk and Tom Bartow. And so my problem that I was trying to address is that the stress that I was feeling outside of work hours, like the inability to turn it off and to have like much needed relaxation time, was really making me a little cuckoo. And I just had these perseverating thoughts about what wasn't getting done and worry about what might be falling through the cracks. So to proverbially lay out my clothes the night before, every afternoon, I would say starting around maybe like 2, I take a pre-printed Avery label and I stick it into my journal, and I write the following day's date, and then it says, it's pre-printed. I made a little thing in Canva, and it says 3 most important. So for instance, it will say like May 14's 3 most important. So tomorrow's dates, 3 most important. And below that, I list out the 3 most important things I must complete the following morning. And then right below that, I list one thing that I absolutely is non-negotiable that has to be done that next day. So the 3 most important things I'm going to do the next day, and then one that I absolutely must get done. And that's it. And I then give myself, like you were saying, the gift of doing them in whatever order I want the next day. And I can fill in around them by doing my other little to-dosies or resting or whatever. But by making that list before I shut down my brain for the day, it allows me to rest during my downtime.
Yes.
And I also believe, and we've talked about this, that while my brain is resting or dreaming, etc., I also think that it's very quietly, not in a sort of a perseverating way, but like very quietly, deep in the background, it's starting to solve around tomorrow's 3 most important things in this very peaceful way.
Nice.
So for me, I've reframed this a bit, and it's less about productivity and it's more about peace. So I just want to offer you
Ooh, I like
side spark. Yeah.
I like that. So it isn't about like what I have to do. It's like, what can I gift myself in order to have some
peace.
time of peace
Yes.
and rest, which is so different and so nice.
We've talked about this before, I think, in our classes. I don't know, maybe we've talked about it on the podcast, but the idea of the parking lot, where it's like, it's almost taking those to-dosies and putting them in a parking lot overnight. They're like, go in the parking garage. You're going to be safe there. There's good security. You don't have to worry about a break-in.
Yep.
You're not going anywhere. Just park it so that the mind can be at peace. Yeah. So, but back to the spark at hand, the why. The why.
Why?
In her excellent book, The Art of Gathering, which was a spark sent our way by the great Celia Keenan Bolger. Thank you, Celia.
Celia, thank you.
Author Priya Parker encourages people to really consider why they are gathering. to consider the purpose of a gathering at its deepest root level.
Ugh.
And which is, if you're just like, oh, we're having the birthday party. When's the birthday party? When's the kid's birthday
Because
party?
that's what we do. Because that's what we do. We just need to do it.
So familiar. Yeah. It's another to-do thing. But Priya says, think back to the last several gatherings you hosted or attended, a networking event, a book club, a volunteer training. If I were to ask you or your host the purpose behind each of those gatherings, I wouldn't be surprised to hear what I often do in my work, what you were supposed to do at the gathering. That networking night, you might tell me, was intended to help people in similar fields meet one another. The book club was organized to get us to read a book together. The volunteer training was arranged to train volunteers. Priya goes on to say, when we gather, we often make the mistake of conflating category with purpose. We outsource our decisions and our assumptions about our gatherings to people, formats, and contexts that are not our own. We get lulled into the false belief that knowing the category of the gathering, the board meeting, workshop, birthday party, town hall, will be instructive to designing it. But we often choose the template and the activities and structure that go along with it before we're clear on our purpose. She then says, when we don't examine the deeper assumptions behind why we gather, we end up skipping too quickly to replicating old, staid formats of gathering, and we forego the possibility of creating something memorable, even transformative. And I'll just add, wildly creative.
Yes.
It's an opportunity for creativity. And we're just sort of like, okay, we'll get the sheet cake from Costco. We'll get that, we just go to what we've done before, what our moms did. And, tradition is one thing, but I think what she's talking about is the potential of making something really transformative.
Suze, I think that even applies to weekly meetings. If you have a job where you have these weekly meetings and sometimes you're like, frankly, we don't need to meet today. We could relieve ourselves of this unless we have some greater purpose that we could communicate to each other. Why don't we skip it? But there's so much resistance to that. There's so much but this is what we do. We get together in a room and
this is what we do.
And
this is how we do it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So to your point, Priya says, before you gather, ask yourself, why is this gathering different from all my other gatherings? Why is it different from other people's gatherings of the same general type? What is this that other gatherings aren't? And she again encourages taking the time for the deeper dive. She says, drill, baby, drill. Take the reasons you think you are gathering because it's our departmental Monday morning meeting.
Right.
Because it's a family tradition to barbecue at the lake, and keep drilling below them. Ask why you're doing it. And every time you get to another deeper reason, ask why again. Keep asking why until you hit a belief or a value. That is the power of asking why, baby cams.
Why?
Yeah.
So
why?
Good.
It's as I did this spark, this is where I was like, oh, I thought it was going to be one thing. And then as I got into it, I realized how pervasive and how powerful this concept of why is. And it really is about that, drilling down, or however you want to look at it. It could be thought of as up. Like, what is the highest purpose that we are striving for?
Yeah.
Another example, we see the power of PS. Before I go any further, I'm going to do a whole separate spark on the art of gathering. It is an unbelievably well-written book. Are you like, wait, I'm going to do it? I just saw it look across your face.
Because I had heard you talk about that book before. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take that off of my spark file. I mean, not that I'm not sparked by it, but I just had an awareness of you're sparking on that. So I can't wait to hear
it's one of those books. It's a little bit like Gay Hendricks. It is so beautifully researched and written. And the way that she has made it applicable to her thoughts are, oh my God, it's so good.
Maybe after your spark, are you saying I might spark back at you?
Spark back at me, baby.
Okay.
It's spark off. It's a really good book. And I'll tell you we'll get into it deeper, but I was like, oh, this is going to make all of our teaching and coaching better too.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
her thoughtfulness. It's so good. It's so
Love,
good. Anyway.
love it. Love it.
And like just sparks on sparks over here. But you know who's really good at that deep contemplative work around event planning and meetings and all of that, making it special? Thomas Schulteis.
Oh, I
Thomas
believe that.
Schulteis
I believe
is
that. I bet he's
so-
a master at that.
Thomas Schulteis, Team Sparkfile, man, is he a master of that.
T-Bone.
He's so good at it. So
Mhm.
shout out T-Bone.
Yes. Yes.
So, but back to the why.
okay.
We see the power of why again in the work of Simon Sinek.
Yes.
I mean, he's
Yeah.
got that. We recommend his TED Talk to so many people. It's called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And it has been viewed just on the TED site more than 54 million times.
That's incredible.
And the idea that he posits in that TED Talk is unpacked even further in his book, Start with Why.
Mhm.
In his TED Talk, Sinek says, and I'm just straight up reading transcripts here, so please enjoy, and I owe you 50 cents, Simon Sinek. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way. And it's the complete opposite of everyone else. All I did was codify it, and it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. So then Simon Sinek draws on a whiteboard 3 concentric circles. So it looks sort of like a very simplistic dartboard.
Uh-huh.
And in the outer ring is the word what, and in the middle ring is the word how, and in the very center, right in the bullseye, is the word why. Sinek says that this simple pictogram explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do. So we know that we are creativity coaches. We know that we are podcasters. We know,
Yeah.
Some people are like, we make Tyvek pipes. Some people
Yeah.
are like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So every single organization on the planet knows what they do. Again, what is that outer circle? And then Sinek goes on, some know how they do it.
Mhm.
And that's what a business person might call their differentiated value proposition or their proprietary process.
Uh-huh.
But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, Sinek says, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. By why, he means, what is your purpose? What is your cause? What is your belief? Why does your organization exist?
Yes.
Why do you get out of bed in the morning?
Yes.
Why should anyone care? And as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way that we communicate is from the outside in. It's very obvious. We go from the clearest thing, the most external surface thing, to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size or their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. To quote the name of Simon Sinek's book, they start with why. They lead with their why. They lead with their purpose. And I have to tell you, when I first saw this TED Talk, it's been a while. I saw it many years ago, but I watched it over and over and over again. And it took me a while to figure out my why. So I watched the TED Talk and I read his book and I talked to my friend Jen Waldman, who now collaborates with Simon Sinek, and she helped provide me and fill in some insight. But I really took a deep dive to discover my why, and I located it and I refined it. And then I'll tell you, Camian, I was really bashful about starting with it, like leading with it, because I don't, I don't know why. I think if I was going to have to articulate it, I didn't want to scare people off or maybe come on too strong.
Uh-huh.
But now, as you know, Camian, I fucking lead
You're
with
like,
it.
get out the way. I got to tell you my why.
baked into anytime I introduce myself,
Yes.
anytime I talk about the work that I do, I lead with it because number one, life's too short. And number two, it's just a great clarifier. If people resonate with it, great. And if they don't, also great.
Yeah.
To quote the great Laura Camion, it's all useful information. Like if
Oh.
people respond to it or they don't, it's sort of like, well, that's useful information.
That's what you
and we
need
can
to
just
know.
cut to the motherfucking chase.
That's right.
So I actually love this why, this manifestation of the why. And you know this well, Cams. And if you're a client or a student of ours, you've heard it too. My why is to free myself and anyone who wants to come along for the ride. And I feel like it's my life's work. It shows up in everything that I do. It's in the song Die Vampire Die. Think about Die Vampire Die. If you've ever heard that song, it is to free myself and anyone who wants to come along for the ride. It's in the Golden Palace. If you've ever heard that, it's this podcast.
Yep.
It's everything that we teach. It's all the therapy I've had. It's my pursuit of financial freedom and self-expression in all its forms. It's my beautiful, loving, authentic, free home life. It's you and me creating a business we love so we can free ourselves in our workday. It's me exercising to be free from pain. It's me being free to tell all of you this unapologetically. Yeah. I have no hesitancy in saying this, to free myself and anyone who wants to come along for the ride. That is my why. And Cams, I know this is something you've given a lot of thought to as well.
I have, and I feel like what I haven't come to, and hey, we could do it in real time, but the perfect way to articulate it. So I know my why is about like truth and authentic self-expression. And everything I've written is about authentic self-expression, getting to a place where I can express myself authentically and encouraging others to do the same. And that's also all my therapy, also all my relationships, also, in the work that we're doing. So I haven't found the phrase. I'm going to work on that, of just like a kicker there of how exactly I'd say that.
It's interesting though, because even though you're like, I don't have the exact 11 words that I want to use to just sum that up in a jaunty way, you live it. Like you are being it.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe that. And I'm proud of that. I think, you and I will touch base on freedom and authenticity quite a bit in our work, and the moments when we transformed our relationship to those things that were keeping us from being free or keeping us from being self-expressed. And both of us can point directly to creative acts that we took to say, hey, I'm going to get a hold of this. This thing is not going to control me anymore. I am going to examine it, write about it, perform it, put it in the world, and literally change the energy and change the power dynamic between me and it. And I'm really proud of that.
I love that, Camion. I'm struck while you're talking. I love that. I feel like we have really, no surprise, but like really complementary whys.
100%.
They just snap together like a jigsaw puzzle. 2 jigsaw puzzle pieces just going click. It's
click.
Great.
That's right.
Click. That's the sound they make when they do it. They go click. So what else do we make of it? I think that one thing we might make of it is taking a deep dive into what moves us at a core level.
Yeah.
What moves us to make, to create, to gather. And I think, as we discussed before, we use this process of just simply having a discussion partner, a thinking partner, say, why? And why does that matter? And why? And why? To get to the heart of rascally dilemmas and finding maybe solutions that free us, because it's all about freedom, baby.
You know what else strikes me, Suze, is that process of the why might also help us identify things that are no longer important to us. It seems to me that sometimes we've got hanger-ons, we've got these things that we always thought were like
vestigial tales.
Exactly. And then when you
vestigial
really
tales, TALES, vestigial tales.
Oh my gosh. Let's write that down. Hashtag vestigial
tales. People are like, you can keep that spark. It is not trending.
I'm writing it down anyway. I like it. I just think that doing that series of questions of why, you might actually end up with like, oh, I don't have a strong why for this. I am now realizing this is not that vital to me. I've just been hanging on to it.
I've outgrown it. I've done it. I've been there and I've done it. I think that's great. That's my spark, Cams, and I'm sticking to it.
Suze, thank you for that. I love it. I really love it. And we talked so much about why. I'm really, really glad we took a deep dive into that. Yes. Yes to all of that. Suze, thank you. Fuck yes.
Fuck yeah. Should we take a little break?
Fuck yes.
Let's return to the podcast. That is not going to stay in. Welcome back.
Please keep it in. Please keep it in.
We'll see. A little pitchy.
Suze, I'm excited to share my spark.
Cams.
What were you going to say? Cams?
I was just saying your name.
Oh, Cams. Suze, I am excited to share my spark. I don't think it's going to shock you at all today because I have, upon reflecting on this, I feel I've been leaving a trail of breadcrumbs a mile long on this one. So you're going to be like, oh yeah, of course. It's
if
kind
you
of
were
come
the
up
murder
in
suspect. I'd be like, I think we got her.
I think we've got her.
She's been messy.
Yeah, I have. I think it's come up in a couple conversations. I think I've even dropped in a few quotes. It might be the worst kept secret of all time, but here we go nonetheless. Here we go. So I read an article a couple of weeks ago in the New Yorker, and it was an interview with Twyla Tharp by the writer Rachel Sim. It was a really great interview, and they dug into like Twyla's history, what she's been up to during the pandemic, and what comes next for her. She is 79 years old. 79
Is she just rocking
years
like
old.
Dockin?
She's fucking rocking like Dockin.
She's rocking like Dockin. You make sure you get the full
Inga. She comes through. Her prickly personality comes through in this interview. It's fascinating.
Is she prickly? I don't know a ton about her. This is what I know about her, that, it is my understanding that her choreography was, shall we say, very demanding for dancers.
Yes.
Yes.
I would say her personality is in line with that. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit too, because I found that to be really, really interesting. There's a couple things I'll hit upon as we go. So put a pin in that. For the record, Twyla began choreographing a new piece over Zoom during the pandemic time, featuring Misty Copeland, among other dancers. She took on a commission in Europe, and the PBS American Masters series featured an episode about her work and her life, which just aired in March of this year. That special is called Twyla Moves, and it explores her life as a dancer, a director, a choreographer. It features interviews and select performances from her more than 160 choreographed works, including 129 dances, 12 television specials, 6 major Hollywood movies, 4 full-length ballets, 4 Broadway shows, and 2 figure skating routines.
Say what you will.
Say what you will.
Done.
Fuck. She gets
Good
shit
Lord.
done. I mean, this woman is prolific. I mean, truly prolific. And she's also written 3 books: Keep It Moving, The Collaborative Habit, and The Creative Habit.
Keep it moving indeed. Holy
I
shit.
remembered that I had my old copy of The Creative Habit, which she wrote almost 20 years ago, like 2003, 200 AD. In the year 2003. And we talk so much about developing a creative habit and making space for creativity with our clients. I thought, hey, I'm going to revisit that book and see what gems could still be mined. And I got to tell you, Suze, most, not all, and we'll get to that, but most of this book not only stands up, but reignited ideas in me that I hadn't thought about in a long, long time. So this was a fun journey back for me.
Nice.
I'm going to stop this. I'm going to completely unplanned. I'm going to mention this. I don't know if I mentioned this in the podcast before, but I think I told you. I was flipping through this book and she, stop me if I said this on the podcast, but she has these exercises in there. And so sometime around 2003, I wrote in the pages of this book, there's a whole section on like your creative DNA. And one of the questions is, who is your muse? And I wrote two people. I wrote Bailey, who was my niece still is my niece, not only at the time, but currently still my niece. She must have just been born. She was, maybe one. And a huge inspiration. I adored her. The second person I wrote is one Susan Blackwell.
Stop it.
In 2003, which means we were either working on, or maybe it was 2004 or 5, like shortly after this book came out, I'm sure. But which means we must have been working on either Electra or The Myth of Female Bonding or something that I was writing that I was like, Susan, you have to be in this.
Wow.
So just saying, I always like to find things that are like, oh yeah.
You like me?
I really like you, Susan. And apparently I have really liked you for a very long time.
And you have excellent taste, if I may add.
I do have excellent taste. I'm not going to argue with you.
That's
fun.
All kidding aside, like that is fun, and I appreciate that. I take that in.
It's fun.
It is genuinely fun. Like this goes back to, my 4 tenets for a good life. I want to make work that I love with people that I love. I'm going to make a lot of money doing it. And I want to have, I want it to be sustainable and balanced.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to think like those are some deep roots we got going.
Those are some.
In terms of the work I love with people that I love.
That's right. It goes way
deep
back.
It goes all the way to the bottom.
So that was really fun. That was delightful.
I love that. Thank you, Laura.
And now for my book report. So this book, as I mentioned, kidding, only half kidding. The book is called The Creative Habit. Learn it and use it for life. And it really is Twyla Tharp's prescription for how to have more creativity in your life. She insists that making it a habit is the key. It's about discipline, preparation, and routine. And she is not joking about that. So a lot of it is like modeling her ideas of her, her discipline, her routine. So it's interesting. We'll get to some of the things that feel a little bit like a different era, but couple of fun things I wanted to mention. First of all, not only does Twyla Tharp use a Spark file, she uses a Spark file box. Literally one of those boxes that is built specifically for files, like you can imagine there's a lot of them that are made that are black and white. They're white with black, and you like fold them up and you fold the top, and you can, they're just made
Do you mean
for
like cardboard?
Cardboard boxes.
Like a legal box.
That's right.
Like in a legal office.
That's right. Yeah. For transporting files.
Yeah.
So for every single project she has done, she starts by taking a box. And in the bottom of the box is the very first image, very first article or idea on a scrap of paper that sparked that project. And then it just continues to fill up with ideas, inspirations, things associated with this project.
For that one project.
For that one project. So she's got, as you can imagine,
so she has multiple
many boxes.
Well, for somebody that does that many different kinds of projects and has made that much, Twyla Tharp's got a lot of boxes.
It's extraordinary. And remember, like, this was prior to the internet, you know, when she started this system, but she still uses this system today. And as a result, all of her projects have extensive research materials and inspirations that she can share later. Much of it she does share on her website, twylatharp.org, by the way. In college, she majored in art history, so it's really no surprise that she has what is essentially an archive of her own work that will live on beyond her life, but it will also continue to inspire her while she's still working, which looks to be many, many more years, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So, for example, she says, a perfect archive gives you more material to call on to use as a spark for invention. The true value of the box, it contains your inspirations without confining your creativity. So, as an example, she goes on to explain the items that are contained in the boxes dedicated to Moving Out, her Broadway musical, which was all dancing to the songs of Billy Joel. So those boxes, it's multiple boxes, but of course it contained his music, that's a given, but so much more. After she got this idea, based on her love of Billy Joel music, how it inspired her to move, the more she read about Billy Joel, she really thought she would like him, but she did not know him. So she made a 20-minute videotape of some choreography to some of his music. She got his number and she called him up. He came over, saw the tape, and gave his permission for his entire catalog, by the way, for her to use all of his music. And they shook on it. That is the day, she said, she started the box on Moving Out. And the very first thing in the box was that videotape. Next, 2 blue index cards. She likes to start each project with a stated goal. For Moving Out, she had 2 goals. 1, to tell a story, and 2, to make dance pay for the dancers. She was tired of not making any money for her project. So it was a stated goal of this project.
Wow.
She wrote it on an index card and in it went into the box. Then in the box went research, music, tapes of Billy Joel live performances, Billy Joel interviews, tapes of dances from the years that he wrote the songs. So like tapes from Soul Train and other TV shows that featured dancing that was happening at the time that music was being made. Several songs that Billy Joel wrote related to the Vietnam War. So she researched news footage and articles about the Vietnam War. Movies like The Deer Hunter, Platoon, Apocalypse Now, etc. All of it into the box. Also in the box are notebooks with her own scribbles and scrawls. Also in the box, a green beret that belonged to a military advisor that she consulted for the show. He taught her how the men signaled to each other down the line because the thickness of the jungle in Vietnam, like you could basically only see one man along because they're like fanned out over a distance. And you were lucky if you could just see one man. So they had to non-verbally communicate. And so she used those real details that he shared with her in her dance pieces. Then there's tchotchkes in the box, all of which relate somehow to the project, from a pair of earrings that inspired some costume looks to Polaroid pictures that she took on trips to like Billy Joel childhood locations. She writes, "That's how a box is like soil to me. It's basic, earthy, elemental. It's home. It's what I can always go back to when I need to regroup and keep my bearings. Knowing that the box is always there gives me the freedom to venture out, be bold, dare to fall flat on my face. She says, before you can think out of the box, you have to start with the box. She goes on to say, and I appreciated this, the box is not a substitute for creating. The box doesn't compose or write a poem or create a dance step. The box is the raw index of your preparation. It's the repository of your creative potential, but it is not that potential realized. And of course, I mean, come on. I love that, as you obviously do, because the research phase, the collecting of ideas phase, especially if you make it as fun as she just made it, it can be so exciting. All these discoveries and connections are being made. It can be delightful, and you're popping off. Your brain is, just making connections between disparate things, but we don't want to get stuck there. Twyla says, I find the box is most useful at 3 critical stages. 1, when you're getting going. 2, when you're lost. And 3, after you've finished. That's when you can look back and see the directions that you didn't take, the ideas that intrigued you, but maybe didn't fit this time around, but might be the start of your next box.
Will you say that one more time?
Yes, I sure will. So Twyla says...
My mind is being blown. So sorry, go ahead.
I like watching it happen. So she says, I find the box is most useful at 3 critical stages.
Okay.
1, when you're getting going, like when you're first starting.
Yes. Yep. Soil, raw materials. Love it.
When you're lost. So let's say you've lost your way, right?
Yes.
And you're like, wait a minute, I need to get back to basics. What was it that inspired me? And number 3, after you're finished, that's when you can look back and see all of the directions that you didn't take, the ideas that intrigued you but didn't fit this time around, and just might be the start of your next box.
I freaking love it.
Right?
I love it. And I just want to say, when I exclaimed so heartily that there's something about like that we love you. Please, we built a fucking podcast about like collecting and sharing sparks, but just like that, collecting sparks is collecting sparks.
That's right.
And
that's
it's
step
not
1.
the whole spark cycle. It's step 1. It's step 1.
That's right. And
I love hearing that.
Oh, I'm so excited to tell you more, because there's more where that came from.
There's more sparks where that came from.
I really love this approach, the whole box approach. I just love how she walks the line between like taking everything very seriously and taking nothing so seriously when it comes to the box. There's just a real gift there to know that the research is important and vital to your project, and to know that your relationship to it is best kept light, to like touch back to it for inspiration, to jostle some new ideas around in your brain, but not to be weighed down by it. That's what I took from her whole section there. I was just like, she has such a healthy relationship to it. One of the next things I delighted in, Suze, was what you just mentioned. She has an entire section on what we would call generating sparks. She calls it scratching. Here's how she describes it. The first steps of a creative act are like groping in the dark, random and chaotic, feverish and fearful, a lot of busyness with no apparent or definable end in sight. You need a tangible idea to get you going. The idea, however minuscule, is what turns the verb into a noun, paint into a painting, sculpt into sculpture, write into writing, dance into a dance. I call it scratching. That's what I'm doing when I begin a piece. I'm digging through everything to find something. It's like clawing at the side of a mountain to get a toehold, a grip, some sort of traction to keep moving upward and onward. Scratching takes many shapes. A fashion designer is scratching when they visit vintage clothing stores or study music videos, or when they park themselves at a sidewalk cafe to see what the pedestrians are wearing. A film director is scratching when they grab a flight to Rome, trusting that they'll get their next big idea in that inspiring city. The act of changing your environment is the scratch. An architect is scratching when he walks through a rock quarry, studying the algebraic connections of fallen rocks on the surface of a rock wall or the sweeping space of the quarry itself. Twyla says this, I hesitate to wax eloquent about the omnipresence of ideas and how everything we need to make something out of nothing, tell a story, design a building, hum a melody, already resides within us in our experience, memories, taste, judgment, critical demeanor, humanity, purpose, and humor. I hesitate because it is so blindingly obvious. If I'm going to be a cheerleader for the creative urge, let it be for something other than the notion that ideas are everywhere. Oh my God, Suze, I just laughed. I was like, well, we'll be the cheerleaders for the fact that ideas are everywhere. I mean, it
We'll
just
host the podcast.
We'll do it. Remember her prickly personality. It's in this book as well. But I laughed so hard because it's truly the essence of the Spark File to be cheerleaders for the notion that ideas are everywhere. I don't mind it. I have zero shame. It might be obvious to some people, but there are so many, many more people who struggle with developing an idea, wondering if what they've got in their mind is an idea, or knowing what to do with it once they have an idea, which is why we're here to help, which is awesome. And so is Twyla, frankly. I mean, she has a bunch of ideas on how to generate sparks in here, which she calls scratching, from like reading, taking in other people's creativity, looking to your mentors, heroes, nature, all of those great ideas. And she gives great examples. But she also offers a few tips on making your scratching or spark hunting more successful. One, she says, be in shape, meaning get into the practice of it and stay in the practice of it. It takes longer when you're rusty. So just keep yourself always searching. She says, scratch in the best places. She recommends listening to the highest quality music, reading the best writers, studying the greats. If you're going to get great ideas, get them from the greats. And then the last thing she says is maintain a white hot pitch. This one I found really interesting because she talks about unleashing furious, mindless energy and watching it bounce off everything in your path. And the hope is that a spark will fly from all of that contact and combustion. And it usually does. But when it does, we often stop to try to correct it, edit it, judge it, slow it down because she doesn't say this, but I think we try to slow it down because the combustion of ideas is really scary. And so she recommends maintaining the white hot pitch when you're in creative mode. Try to resist the urge to calm it down. Instead, if you can, move with it, roll with it, let it take you to new ideas. I have to say that one struck me because I've had projects that had such an energy behind them that scared me. And I can just personally say, like, I was like, slow it down. And I know you and I are always like, slow it down on a lot of things. But I think this is important to be conscious of not slowing something down out of fear. Letting those ideas really roll.
Usually when we talk about slow it down, we're talking about let it go deeper, like take your time and let it go deeper.
Yes.
But you're talking about not pulling off and back from something because of fear.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because sometimes something is so exciting and the energy does feel like a combustion and the ideas are big and it's maybe grander than what you had planned on. And suddenly we can feel overwhelmed. Yeah. So I just thought that was interesting. Maintain the white hot pitch. So she really talks about the creative state as turning off the conscious mind and the mental filters. She's very careful to say, like, it's not like meditation, but it is also not our conscious mind with all of its judgments and filters. So it's like this middle state of like leaving yourself open to everything. She tells this story that I had totally forgotten about. It's a story of Thomas Edison. She says when he needed an idea, Thomas Edison liked to sit in what he called a thinking chair, holding a metal ball bearing in each palm.
Yeah.
Do you know this story? With his hands closed, and on the floor directly under his hands were 2 metal pie pans. He would close his eyes and allow his body to relax. Somewhere between consciousness and dreaming, his hands would relax and open without effort, letting the ball bearing fall noisily into the pie pans. That's when he would wake up and he would write down whatever idea was in his head at the moment. And it was his way of coming up with ideas without his conscious mind censoring them.
So this is a story that Emily Fletcher tells when she's teaching meditation.
Interesting.
Because what you are describing with that story of Thomas Edison and basically cresting up into consciousness, and then if you were meditating back down and back up and back down, you're doing it with the mantra as opposed to the sound of the ball bearing hitting the pie pan. You're doing it. But I will say it is very creatively fertile. Yep. Thomas Edison was doing it to surface when he was maybe at a impasse and he was looking to refresh his brain and surface creative ideas. And I will say that when I meditate, which is every day, I will sometimes, if we have a conundrum or if I have a conundrum and I'm like, oh, the way we describe it to our clients sometimes is I'll ask my highest self, so capital S Susan, I'll just pose the question and then I'll meditate. And a lot of times the answer will come during meditation.
Yes.
It's the ball bearing hitting the pie pan. Yeah.
It is. And it's like getting out of our way. It's like silencing that judge that sometimes like kills things before they even have a chance.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like just getting that out of the way.
Yeah.
She also shares her beliefs about luck and preparation. Which a lot of people have these ideas about whether the muse comes to you. Yes, but you have to be working. And so it's a similar idea. She says the most productive artists I know have a plan in mind when they get down to work. They know what they want to accomplish, how to do it, and what to do if the process falls off track. But there's a fine line between good planning and over planning. You never want the planning to inhibit the natural evolution of your work. This, to me, is the most interesting paradox of creativity. In order to be habitually creative, you have to know how to prepare to be creative. But good planning alone won't make your efforts successful. It's only after you let go of your plans that you can breathe life into your efforts.
Amen.
Amen, right? Your creative backing up. Your creative endeavors can never be thoroughly mapped out ahead of time. You have to allow for the suddenly altered landscape, the change in plan, the accidental spark, and you have to see it as a stroke of luck rather than a disturbance to your perfect scheme. Habitually creative people are, in E.B. White's phrase, prepared to be lucky, or prepared for happy little accidents, we'd say, thanks to Bob Ross. Being prepared for luck is like getting a message that tells you something good may happen to you between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. today. Make sure you're at your desk or in your studio or at your laboratory bench, or you have your guitar in your hands working, and keep your eyes open for it. You have to be present in the room to recognize the stroke of luck. The more you are in the room working, experimenting, banging away at your objective, the more luck has a chance of biting you on the nose.
Amen.
Amen, right? Amen.
Yeah.
It's just like, people are magnetized to those who are doing things already in motion. The momentum is such a draw. There's also a lot of really good stuff in this book about creative limitation. And we're going to revisit that. And I think, we have some curriculum about creative limitation. And I think there's some Twyla Tharp stuff that needs to go in there. She also talks about the need for failure, what to do when you get in a groove or a rut, and even how to increase our metaphor IQ. Which is so interesting, Suze. That's going to be another conversation for another day. But there's over 30 different exercises you can do. It's very active. I really appreciate also that she explores some of the more frustrating, like, misconceptions about creativity. She says there's a paradox in the notion that creativity should be a habit. We think of creativity as a way of keeping everything fresh and new, while habit implies routine and repetition. Yeah. That paradox intrigues her because it occupies the place where creativity and skill rub up against each other. It takes skill to bring something you've imagined into the world, and no one is born with that skill. If art is the bridge between what you see in your mind and what the world sees, then skill is how you build that bridge. And Suze, I think we know, obviously, the building of that skill, it takes time. It takes trial and error. It takes failure. Yeah. And we have so little experience practicing the errors. Like, so many of us, I think, we've witnessed it time and time again. Like, we just want our work to pop out of us perfect, deeply meaningful, culturally relevant. And we tend not to be patient with ourselves as our skill develops.
Yeah.
If I could help anyone in their creative efforts, Suze, I think this is one of the most important and meaningful steps that must be taken to understand what it feels like to be in the process of becoming skilled at something. Yeah. Allowing for the time and the energy that it takes, allowing for the vulnerability that takes, and knowing I'm just in the middle of it. That's all. I'm just in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But we're just not taught that. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like so much of our arts education is about end product and how quickly can you get to the end product. So, as Twyla says, when creativity has become your habit, when you've learned to manage time, resources, expectations, and the demands of other, when you understand the value in the place of validation, continuity, and the purity of purpose, there's your why, then you're on the way to an artist's ultimate goal, the achievement of mastery. There's really a lot that we can learn from Twyla Tharp about her process, her work ethic, and her attitude. The one thing that really struck me reading this, as we would say in today's terminology, Twyla Tharp is not here to be your basic bitch. She is not, there's just nothing pedestrian about her approach. She makes it clear there's no time for these types of worries. But here is what she does say about her fears, which I think are interesting. She says, when I walk into the studio, I am alone, but I'm alone with my body, ambition, ideas, passions, needs, memories, goals, prejudices, distractions, fears. These 10 items are at the heart of who I am. Whatever I'm going to create will be a reflection of how these have shaped my life and how I've learned to channel my experiences into them. The last two, distractions and fears, are the dangerous ones. They're the habitual demons that invade the launch of any project. No one starts a creative endeavor without a certain amount of fear. The key is to learn how to keep free-floating fears from paralyzing you before you've begun. When I feel that sense of dread, I try to make it as specific as possible. Let me tell you my 5 big fears. 1, people will laugh at me. 2, someone has done it before. 3, I have nothing to say. 4, I will upset someone I love. 5, once executed, the idea will never be as good as it is in my mind. These are mighty demons, but they are hardly unique to me. You probably share some. If I let them in, they'll shut down my impulses and perhaps turn off the spigots of creativity altogether. So, I combat my fears with a staring down ritual, like a boxer looking his opponent right in the eye before a bout. Number 1, people will laugh at me. Not the people I respect. They haven't yet, and they're not going to start now. Number 2, someone has done it before. Honey, it's all been done before. Nothing's original, not Homer or Shakespeare, and certainly not you. Get over yourself.
She's giving me Die Vampire Die vibes.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
Number 3, I have nothing to say. An irrelevant fear. We all have something to say. Number 4, I will upset someone I love. A serious worry that is not easily exercised or stared down because you never know how loved ones will respond to your creation. The best you can do is remind yourself that you're a good person with good intentions. You're trying to create unity, not discord. Number 5, once executed, the idea will never be as good as it is in my mind. Toughen up. Leon Bastiat Alberti, the 15th century architectural theorist, said, "Errors accumulate in the sketch and compound in the model. But better an imperfect dome in Florence than cathedrals in the clouds." And isn't that what it all comes down to? Having created something, even with its imperfections and things you would do differently, isn't it better than not having created anything at all?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. There's so much goodness. There's a lot of goodness in this book. There are a few things that didn't quite hold up for me. One of them, I think it sort of triggered feelings in me because I was like, this was an idea that was perpetuated when I was in college and just getting out of school. And Twyla states it like it's a fact. And it is this idea that you cannot be more than one type of artist. She literally says it is a curse to be talented in more than one art form because then you have to choose. And that gives you a 50-50 chance that you'll be wrong in your choice. And you could have been a genius at the other thing that you didn't choose. And I was like, I don't think this idea is helpful. First of all, creatives don't need another beer to be distraught over. And I think you have to feel like what is of interest to you. And that may change over time. And you get to change over time. Also, we're living in a new world. People today, in particular, younger people, which I'm incredibly inspired by, are naming their interests, giving themselves hyphenates and going for it. Yeah. Like this idea that you can only be one. I think we're all over it.
Chicken says, "Not feeling it, Twyla. Not feeling it." No. Do you know the not feeling it chicken? The not feeling it chicken says,
"No,
not feeling it." Thanks, Pete Holmes, for that.
Not feeling it.
Yeah, I think that's probably. And maybe she still believes this. Maybe she does still stand by this, but it feels dated.
It feels dated. And I do think it's difficult to do all of the things at the same time. But the idea that we contain multitudes and can express ourselves in many different artistic modes, I'm down with that.
Yeah.
The other thing that feels a bit dated to me, frankly, and we touched on this at the very top of the Spark, the attitude of if you are an artistic genius, you can overwork people and you can be rude because you've earned it. There's a little tiny flavor of that in this book. It's filed under never wavering from your artistic vision, but it rings out with a different tone in these days, I think. I really do. I think we're evolving. I mean, I get that when you've earned your stripes, you get to bark out orders however you want and only give respect to those who will work around the clock. That's the world that we were brought up in. Right. I get that, but I really do think it might be changing a bit. Let's hope it's changing a little bit.
I agree. Yeah.
So
it has to change for us because we're just too fucking tired.
We're too fucking tired.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bark orders at anyone. I want to work collaboratively with people. And
that's right.
Yeah. It felt dated. In that interview in the New Yorker, talk about prickly. Twyla says this about that American Masters special that just aired on PBS. She said, "It is the low-hanging fruit on the tip of the iceberg, the beginner's kit with me and my career." Then she paused, sighed, and added, "But that's okay. It's better than nothing." I will say this about both my spark and about the book, The Creative Habit. It's just the beginner's kit. It's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to designing a creatively filled life. In fact, Twyla sums up the book like this. In the end, there is no ideal condition for creativity. What works for one person is useless for another. The only criterion is this: make it easy on yourself. Find a working environment where the prospect of wrestling with your muse doesn't scare you, doesn't shut you down. It should make you want to be there. And once you find it, stick with it. To get the creative habit, you need a working environment that's habit forming. All preferred working states, no matter how eccentric, have one thing in common. When you enter into them, they compel you to get started. And I think that's really what we make of it, Suze. Get started. Getting started is the key. You can write a whole book about it, but at the end of the day, Nike put it best. We just have to do it.
Do it.
I mean, really, I was talking with one of our clients recently, and they're like, "Well, I just don't know. Like, I'm having this resistance, and I feel like the answer is like I just have to do it, but I don't want to do it." And I like, we want so much for there to be a different answer.
Yeah.
But we just have to do it.
Yeah. It's funny though, when you do get into the practice of it, like you were saying, when you show up and then you stand a better chance of catching some luck. When you're in the practice of it and that flow is a little more lubricated, it is easier. It is easier. And when you're kind of rusty or like you've been fallen off the pony for a little while, like it just reminds me of the exercise.
It is.
If you're in the flow of it, you feel good, you're doing it every day, you don't question it, you grab your sports bra just in arm's reach there and you're doing it.
But just do it.
When it can be daunting if you're off the wagon and trying to get something going.
And I think the less we do it, the more pressure we put on the session when we do it. So not having done it in a long time, we need some like evidence of our genius to arrive almost immediately. And in actuality, that's going to come with the practice. That's going to come with the habit, the habitual spark, searching, fanning the flames, you know?
You know, there was another thing in what you said, and it was sort of solidified by, you know, there's an American Masters piece that comes out, and you're sort of complaining in your New Yorker profile about how it's just the tip of the tip of the iceberg of your life's work, and your genius. And there was something inherent in something that you said earlier, and I can't remember what the specific point was, but I was like, oh, she's gunning for legacy. Like what she's gunning for with her creativity is something different than you or I, or maybe some of the people that are listening.
Suze, 100%. It might be a connection to the archive. This fact that, you know, she does talk about it in the New Yorker, that dance, it isn't like there are manuscripts or manuscripts of anyone's work that can be, you know, put on file and found there years later. Dance, there isn't sheet music. So I think it's incredibly important to her that these archives exist and that her dance is cataloged and written about in the context of like how it changed the dance world.
You know what? You're right. But that's not the point that you made that made me think, oh, you know what it was?
What?
It's the sort of, it's a curse to be a multi-passionate person.
Oh.
That was the point. Because I was like, oh, because you're just trying to ascend to mastery.
That's right.
In one discipline.
That is correct.
That to me, I'm like, what I hope I hope we change the world. Back to my spark, like what is your
Yes.
why? Because I want to make the
Yes.
world a better place.
Yes.
But legacy is less of a driver for me, if I'm honest. I'm sort of like, I'll do what I think 100
Yeah.
years from now, it's probably a pretty safe bet that nobody's going to be saying my name. And I'm not that chuffed about it, as the British would say. But I think about all the different creative things that you and I get to do just in our
Yes.
worlds, whether that is podcasting or teaching, which for me, I feel like that's like my
Yeah.
true calling in life. But then sometimes it's acting, sometimes it's painting.
Yep.
And am I ever going to be
Picasso.
Michelangelo
Mhm.
or Chuck Close or Picasso or Jerry Uhlfelder? I'm looking at her paintings on my wall right now. Nope, I'm not. But I love it. It brings me
Yeah,
pleasure.
that's
and
right.
I don't view that as a waste of time just because it's not flowing into me reaching the pinnacle of being a great teacher. I think in some ways it makes me a better teacher. So it's funny. I have so much respect for Twyla Tharp, and I
Mhm.
don't want to come off like I am like crapping on
Oh
her
no.
legacy or the things she's, all the
Yeah.
amazing things she's accomplished. I just feel differently. And I think it's because my eyes are on a different prize.
That's right. And I also want to remain open to the possibility that maybe she feels differently now. It's very possible that she has evolved since writing this book. But it also
How about that New Yorker article? How about that?
Well, true. They didn't touch on this topic exactly of, being only one kind of artist, but I think you are spot on in terms of the mastery. That is her ultimate goal. And she does talk a lot about Mozart and Beethoven and Bach and those people who she would say
live.
Yeah, whose names live on,
on.
And that she aspires to that level. It makes perfect sense. And it explains the work ethic. It explains the round the clock. I mean, there are a lot of stories about her. She had gotten married and moved upstate and had a child, and then almost immediately moved back, like child in tow, to the dance studios. Like, just could not, like, she was unwilling to not have dance in her life, no matter what it took. And that took years of essentially living in poverty and holding their dance rehearsals in the park outside, bringing the baby everywhere. There's just no doubt, like, she driven, I guess driven is the word that people would probably say, like, at any cost, she was driven. And she might argue that is what it takes. That she might say that is what it takes to leave a legacy. Yeah. Interesting. But I mean, it's very, very inspiring.
Watching television too much.
That's right. She didn't have Netflix during this time, so that could explain everything.
Yeah. I like more, just different drivers, different strokes.
It's just different drivers. It all goes back to like what drives your creativity, and leaving a legacy just may not be the, what's driving us, but there's still so much to take in terms of the creative habit and creating a habit that works for you, that is unique. No one's going to have all the answers. No one's going to say, I mean, all you can do is learn about ways other people do it. And then whatever is working for you, keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Keep doing it and make a habit of it.
Make a creative habit of it.
Make a creative habit of it, Suze.
I enjoyed this Spark outing very much, Laura Camion.
Oh, me too, Suze. Thanks. It's always a good time.
It still stands. This is a good fucking time for us. We don't know what it's like for you out there, but we sure do like it.
I hope you had fun too and got
I
sparked.
swear, every time we do this, I wanted to check in with you because before we started recording, you were like, I've got a little film of irritability.
Yes.
And I almost like flash paper. I want to light it on fire and let it burn off. And I just wanted to check in with you and see how you're feeling now after we've sparked it out a little bit.
It's burn off.
I had
a spark. And there it went.
I had a suspicion. I feel like this podcast is such a mood changer for me. Even if I come in and I'm just like ground down to a fine powder.
Yes.
I do a little sparking with you. I'm completely sober and still so it's like happy juice.
It's happy juice. It reminds me of, 20 years ago when we would just sit and talk about things and be inspired and excited. And we didn't have anything to record it on, but now we do. So now we get to record these conversations.
I love that. 20 years ago when you wrote in that book that I was your muse. Well, me and Bailey. Hi, Bailey. I'll share it with you.
What am I going to write for you next? I feel the urge, Sue. Something's brewing.
Laura Camion.
Mm-hmm.
Brewing. I said this to you the other day, but I was like, if you want to, please, I don't need to give you a creative homework assignment. You got plenty on your plate. But I was like, I think you might want to give some thought to either making something for yourself where you get to center your performing as well as your writing, but that you get to perform, or that you find an external opportunity. But I'm just like, if you can write it yourself, make it couture, baby.
Make it couture.
I just thought, I don't know.
I think something's
you have
brewing.
A lot to do, but I
see something on the horizon. Yeah, I'm super excited.
That twinkle in your eye.
Yeah.
You little devil.
I'm excited. Yeah, there's some stuff sparking off in my mind. And
I think you're going to blow minds. I feel like, most of the world doesn't know. They know you're a great Laura Camion. They know many people know you're a great coach. You're a great teacher. You're a great fucking actor. And a hell of a writer too. And I think they're going to be like, what? They're not going to know what hit them. What? They'll say out loud from the audience in the darkness.
What? Oh, thank you, Suze. That's exciting. And I'm excited to get, maybe back on and do something with you. Because that's what we did back in the day. We just wrote the shit.
I don't have to memorize anything, do I?
I'll try to make it so like your character always carries a clipboard around or something. So there you go.
Can I just tell you, I just shot just a little tiny part on the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yes.
And it was one of those things that they do to guests on the show. This is every show. It's not just Maisel. But this is my area of specialty, ladies and gentlemen, and people who don't identify as either ladies or gentlemen. This is my area of specialty. I can, it takes a year off my life, but I can do these big, long runs of text where I'm just like, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that. It's me talking for 2 minutes straight sort of thing. And I didn't know until I did an episode of a show called The Good Wife, and I walked into the hair and makeup room and Christine Baranski goes, "Oh, thank God you're here." And I was like, oh, they make the guests do a lot of the heavy lifting so that they don't have to memorize this shit. So I'm sitting in hair and makeup, just quietly getting my hair done for Maisel, running those lines because I had some thick, chunky lines. And Jane Lynch is on that show as well. And from like 3 chairs away, Jane Lynch, who, let me tell you right now, it's not always like, you like a little showbiz talk, kids?
Here we go.
Jane Lynch. Have I told you this? Jane Lynch was like, "Susan, we're so excited that you're here with us today. I had dinner last night with Alex Borstein. She's so excited that you're here. She played you. She played you in title of
which
show.
You knew that.
Which I did know, but I didn't know they were talking about me over dinner. And I was just so, but Jane was was so warm. It's not always like that. So thank you, Jane Lynch. I'm sure she's not listening to this podcast.
Jane Lynch.
And then she said, how you doing? And I was like, Jane, I've got a lot of talking to do today. And she said, it's my entire career. She said, there are just a few of us who can handle a lot of language and sound really authoritative. And that's you and that's me. And I was like, it is.
You and me, Jane Lynch.
You and me, Jane Lynch. But where was this story going? Where did we start this story?
You were talking about
her story.
Not having to memorize lines. And
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
There we go. Clipboard. Laura Camion. Thank you. God
you bet. But apparently I could give you an entire mouthful of lines. Like I could give you paragraphs. Now you've sort of outed yourself. You and Jane Lynch could do that.
Me and Jane Lynch. So I had this big, chunky list after list. It was a lot. And props came up and they handed me a clipboard and they were like, okay, here's your clipboard. Here's the file folder. And I was like, how about you type up my lines on some period paper and help a sister out? And they were like, oh yeah. And they take my clipboard back and they bring it. So if you ever see that episode of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, please enjoy me just fully dipping down to the clipboard, Laura Camion.
Yes. Lines on a clipboard. You brought it
lines on a clipboard,
circle.
Baby.
Full
or we could do like my other spark is we could do like love letters. Do you know that show? And it's just you and I reading love letters to each other. And we could just do love letters. We could do a lady on lady love letters.
Oh my God, Suze. It's going on my vision board.
Put it on your vision board and smoke it.
You and me.
Yes.
You and me in love letters back on Broadway. They're going to be looking for, small casts.
And then on Monday nights, it can be Sally Struthers and Chuck Durning. I don't think, is he still alive? Anyway, I think that's it. I think we should shut this down. This is it. This has been...
I gotta go work on my vision board.
Episode. That's right. Get out some magazines and scissors.
Yes.
This episode of The Spark File, as usual, was made on Muncie, Lenape, and Seminole land. And as always, we do hope this put another bunch of sparks in your file, or maybe it just did that for us. It's a win-win. Listen, if there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and you've fanned it into a creative flame and you'd like to share that, we hope you'll email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We'll even take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you got to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
You can follow us on social at The Spark File and be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast, especially the subscribe part. It really helps other listeners find us. And if you like this podcast, we hope you'll share it with people you love. And if you didn't like it, we want you to ask yourself, why?
5 whys.
Because you don't want to make the world a better place. That's on you.
Is that why? If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You can't just put it into your spark box. You got to take it and
make it. Yes. Bye. Why?
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the chief creative officer and chief marketing officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.